So welcome everyone. My name is Alexandra Stephens and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Career Programs and Engagement at the Hiatt Career Center at Brandeis. Welcome to today's webinar on how to use LinkedIn to find people and expand your network. Today's webinar will be an hour long. There will be time for questions at the end. So as you think of any questions, please feel free to use the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel to submit those. And I will get to as many as I possibly can today. I also want to remind you that today's webinar will be recorded, so you can access it later on if you do have to jump off the call today. Because there are a number of folks on the call, we will not be using the raise hand function, so please be sure to just submit those questions through the question box, and I will get back to you on the air. So just to tell you a little bit about me, my role here at Brandeis is to put on wonderful career programs like this. We do a monthly webinar series, and this webinar is actually the second in a series specifically about LinkedIn. And then the other piece of my job is getting folks involved with career-related mentoring and volunteer opportunities. So it's wonderful to have you all here today, and without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started. So for those of you who attended the first webinar on LinkedIn, we talked mainly about using LinkedIn to build your professional brand. Today we're going to be focusing on how to stay connected using LinkedIn and expand your network and research companies, fields, people, groups, and jobs especially. So you're all here likely because you think LinkedIn is a worthwhile tool, and I presume that many of you may even have a profile already. If you do choose one form of social media to commit yourself to for professional networking, in my humble opinion, LinkedIn should be it. So the percentages range widely, but 70 to 90% of recruiters and hiring managers are using LinkedIn to source candidates for jobs. That's a huge number, and that doesn't count all the other people that might be looking at you for other opportunities. LinkedIn is the world's largest professional network, and it has over 300 million members in over 200 countries around the world. So the opportunities to find connections, jobs, references, informational interviewers abound. And particularly the Brandeis Alumni Network is also quite strong on LinkedIn. So we're going to be showing you how to access people for a number of purposes and how to actually conduct those searches. We'll be doing some live demos as well. So like I said, LinkedIn is really great to build your professional brand, as we covered in the first webinar, because it allows you to have control over your profile and what appears in Google search results. That's really important. So once you've established that great, effective profile based on what your goals for LinkedIn are, you can use it to stay connected, expand your network, research companies, fields, people, search for jobs, and we're going to talk about all of those things in due time. So here's what we'll be covering specifically today. We're going to be covering the group function, why you might want to join, how to search for ones that would be relevant to you. We'll also be talking about company pages, why you might want to follow a company, what a company page can offer you in terms of career research into that field or function, and how you can learn more about the career paths of others that have worked at specific companies. We'll also look at the job search function of LinkedIn. So thousands and thousands of jobs are posted on LinkedIn, and they're very easily searchable, and a lot of people don't know about that function, so we'll talk about that. We'll then talk about searching specifically for people. So we'll start more narrowly talking about how to search the Brandeis Alumni and Student Network, and then we'll expand our search to more advanced searches that you can conduct to find virtually anyone in any type of career field. After that, we'll talk about some best practices for outreach and how to avoid different types of messages that might not get you the results you want. And then we'll talk about some resources beyond LinkedIn. So Brandeis and the Hiatt Career Center both offer some an alumni directory and a number of other resources to help you all to connect with each other. So that is what we'll cover today. There's a lot to do. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And I'm going to get started by asking you our first poll question of the day, just to take your pulse on your work with LinkedIn thus far. So we're going to start by talking about groups. So I'd love to know this. What has been your interaction to date with LinkedIn groups? And you can select all that apply here. You should be seeing this on your screen. So I'll give you 5 more seconds or so for you all to weigh in. So have you joined a group or groups in the past? Have you posted or responded to group discussions? Have you posted or searched for jobs within a group? Do you moderate a group? I do. Or have you not joined one yet? And that's perfectly fine. And maybe we'll convince you to, or maybe we won't. So if you just want to take a few more seconds to weigh in, and then I'll share those results with you. So 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Okay. And these are the results. So it looked like the vast majority of you have joined groups before, which is great. So that's a great starting point. About 14% of you have either posted or responded to a group discussion. About a third of you have searched for jobs, which is fantastic. And 7% haven't joined one yet, and that is okay. So, groups. So why might you want to join a group? Obviously, the poll was a bit leading, and it told you some of the reasons why you might want to. But the first is to request and share professional expertise. So there are groups for everything under the sun on LinkedIn. You may be part of an association or a professional organization that has a membership group represented on LinkedIn. There are groups based on interest. So for example, I'm part of the Marketers Making a Difference group, which is a group full of like-minded marketers that work in mission-driven organizations, for example. Or there might be groups based on a company that you worked for previously or currently, and that's actually a group for employees and past employees to interact and network with each other about, again, a like-minded goal or interest, which is your employer. So no matter what your interests are, is most likely a group for you on LinkedIn, and it's very easy to search for those, and we'll show you how to do that in a bit. The other thing, which I'm happy that a third of you have taken advantage of thus far, is posting and searching for jobs. Now, to post a job traditionally on LinkedIn, it does require a fee. And so a lot of the times it's recruiters that are posting the jobs in that way. But on groups, you can actually post jobs for free. So if you or your organization is hiring for a certain number of positions, you can share those in groups where members of those groups are relevant to the types of candidates you seek. But then you can also search for those jobs. So there's a group tab specifically called Jobs in many groups, and you can search there as well. The great part about groups as well is that you get access to new contacts. So we're talking about ways to expand your network, and a group is a great way to do that. Again, it might be a group based on a professional association, and therefore you're meeting others who are also in that association. Or it could be a group based on an event you attended, or again, an interest area, industry, or job function. And members of the group have a nice opportunity because they're allowed to message one another. So a lot of us see that we're not able to message folks when we look at their profile on LinkedIn, and we have to jump to the inviting them to connect piece. Now, as you can see here, Andrea is one of my first connections. She's the executive director of our office. But we also are part of a group together. So if you click on the members tab of that group, you're able to send a message to them instead of inviting them to connect. It's wonderful. You can also search within the group to find members based on certain criteria. You can easily do a keyword search. And we're going to show you a little demo of that in just a second. I wanted to also point out specifically that Brandeis University has groups, especially for Brandeis students and alumni. So the Hiatt Career Center, where I work, moderates the Brandeis University Career Connections group on LinkedIn. This is open to all members of the Brandeis community. And then the Brandeis Alumni Relations Office moderates the Brandeis University Alumni Networking Group, which is open just to Brandeis alumni. So there's thousands of members in this group, and in either group, in fact. And the great thing about it is that you can message them. So even if you're not searching for a job or active in the job search right now, groups can be really helpful to you. And I want to bring you back to the first bullet point here, which is requesting and sharing professional expertise and experience. So not only can you use the discussion board function to ask your own questions, learn more about a career field, ask for a best practice in your industry, but you can also respond to those discussion questions of others in the group. And it really is a two-way street. And to remember that even if you don't need other people's advice right now, they may really benefit from yours. So thinking about ways that you can be an active participant in groups. The other thing to remember is that some groups are closed and you need to be accepted by a moderator to get in, while others are open and your access to them will be granted right away. Okay, so let me just show you briefly what this looks like. So to search for a group, you would log into LinkedIn and come up to this search bar right up here, and you can search groups. Say I wanted to look up groups on marketing. And here's a number of different options, and then you can easily do an advanced search and filter it down even more. So for example, say I wanted to look at groups specifically about social media marketing. There we go. Let's click back on groups. It went to people. Here we are, a number of groups, and you'll see the levels of engagement and are different in each group. Some you'll notice are labeled as very active, and then you'll see how many discussions are in 1 month and how many members they have. So feel free to try doing your own searches based on which groups are of interest to you. Okay, any questions about groups for right now? Before I move on, you can certainly use the question box before I move on to searching companies. And again, if you have questions throughout, we can certainly get to them as we go along. Okay. So searching for companies. Now, many companies, I won't say most, but a vast majority of companies do have company pages that they manage on LinkedIn. For folks doing career research, career exploration, or who are applying for jobs at a certain company or want to seek out jobs at a certain company, the company pages have a vast amount of information for you. So the first thing is you can see how you're connected to that company. So automatically, just by viewing the company page, you aggregate, LinkedIn aggregates for you the connections that you have to that company. So whether one of your connections is currently working there, whether someone knows someone who's working there, and vice versa. So it's a really great way to see if there are potential networking opportunities at a specific company. Each page also lists any job postings that are on LinkedIn associated with that company. So if you know that you want to work for TripAdvisor, for example, you can go to their company page and see what their current job postings are. They may be the same as what is on their website, or it may be slightly different. There's also the opportunity to follow companies to receive news and updates in your LinkedIn news feed. So there's a follow button, and that will cause their updates to appear in your LinkedIn news feed, and also they will show up as a company that you're following in your profile. So groups will as well. If you're part of a group, you have the opportunity to show that you're a member of that group in your profile. it helps round out your brand as well, because it helps to show folks looking at your profile what your interests are. The company pages also do an interesting thing, which is show you a list of similar companies that people have viewed. So if you're doing career research and you are interested in a company like TripAdvisor, it may also show you some competitors. So it can really be helpful both for the company themselves to see who they're competing with on LinkedIn, but also for job applicants and others who might be interested in going into that field to see what other opportunities exist outside that company that they might also be interested in. So we're going to take a moment to look at a specific company page, again, of TripAdvisor. I picked them because we recently had an alumni breakfast there. We have a number of Brandeis alumni working there. So let's take a look at the TripAdvisor company page. So again, similar to the search for a group, you can search for a company by clicking on the top search term drop-down and choosing companies and typing in the company name and clicking on it, and this is what it looks like. So here's that follow button we talked about. This will make sure that those news and updates appear in your news feed on your homepage. You also see how you're connected. So I have 3 first-degree connections, 1 second-degree connection, and you see how many people are listed as employees on LinkedIn. So this may be either current or past employees who have listed TripAdvisor in their list of experience. And you can see all and browse through those and do keyword searches within those lists. A lot of company pages will have slightly different tabs up here. The TripAdvisor career tab is actually pretty blown out in a nice way. The recruiting team clearly uses LinkedIn a lot for their recruiting, so they have a lot of branded material here. They have people talking about why it's a good place to work, testimonials, recent updates that the TripAdvisor company has been mentioned in, articles and whatnot. And again, some more content. You can see here they've listed their current job openings, and you can search all jobs, and you can do that same thing from this page as well. So you'll see here there's affiliated company pages. These are some of their co-branded sites. But then there's the people also viewed in this right-hand column. So here you'll see who potentially some of their competitors and like-minded companies are. So Travelocity, Expedia, Kayak, Booking.com, and Priceline. And you can visit those company pages to see similar things. If they do have a group associated with the company, you'll also find that potentially on this page. So TripAdvisor does have a group specifically for current and past employees to network with one another. So these are company pages and why you might want to follow them. I'm going to take a look over here and see if I have any questions to date. All right, we do have a question from someone of how do I find if anyone from my alma mater is currently working at Brandeis? Okay, so that's a great question, and that would actually be a part of advanced search. So we're going to be going to that in just a little bit when we start searching for people. So we can definitely use that as an example. Okay. And now, okay, I do have something coming through that when I'm talking about TripAdvisor, it isn't showing up as I'm talking. So is everyone else being able to see my screen right now? If folks could just weigh in with the question box just briefly and make sure you can see my TripAdvisor screen. Okay, I got a yes from someone else. A yes from a few people, thank you. If you are watching from a tablet, you might have trouble seeing the live demos due to flash restrictions if you're watching from an iPad or something like that. So I do apologize. You will be able to watch the recorded version if you are missing out on some of these demos. Okay, so moving right along, jobs. This is obviously a big one for folks. And like I mentioned, there are thousands of jobs posted on LinkedIn and very easily searchable. So there's a jobs tab right at the top of your profile page where you can do an advanced search, and it looks a bit like this. Exactly like this. This is a screenshot. So you can search by job title, keywords, or company name. You can search by industry here. You can search by zip code, so you see how close they are to your geographic region that is your preference, and then specific job functions. And you can also search by country, so international positions are posted. As I mentioned, jobs are also posted in the groups, in the jobs tab of groups, and also specific company pages may have affiliated jobs as well. So we can show a little example of what this looks like as well. So here is the jobs homepage. You get there from just clicking on jobs in this top bar right here. So again, you can do the really quick keyword search. So again, if I wanted to look for a social media specialist position just quickly and see everything that's out there, here is what it is, 157 results. We can filter here if I wanted to be specifically in the Boston area. You can search up by zip code. And here we are. So that's one example. And you can filter your search as many times as you like. You can search for jobs at a specific company. Again, we can use TripAdvisor as that option. And you see all of their company postings that are available. So it's really great. Again, you can't be sure if these are postings that are unique to LinkedIn or if they're also listed on their company page or on their company website as well. But certainly it's another place to look. And it's what's really great searching for jobs on LinkedIn is that you're able to see who you might be connected with that is related to the company posting this. It's really great. And could be really huge for you as you are applying to jobs to be able to build your network that way. So if there's any questions on searching for jobs on LinkedIn, we can certainly go over those now. And if not, we will be moving on to searching for contacts. So like I mentioned, Brandeis alumni are all over LinkedIn, and really they span a number of industries, geographic areas, and job functions. One of my favorite tools on LinkedIn is the Alumni Dashboard tool. It's fairly new-ish as of 2 years ago or so, and it makes it really easy and user-friendly to search for people from your alma mater. So we're going to go into an example of how to do that. The other option is to do the advanced people search. So similar to the advanced group searches or the advanced job searches or company page searches, you can also search for people the same way. So we're going to take a look at that right now. What you're seeing on your screen now is a screenshot of what that Alumni Dashboard tool looks like. So if you are a Brandeis alum and it was your most recent educational experience, you would be able to find it right away by going to the Connections tab and clicking on Find Alumni. Now I'll do that and open it in a new window so that you can see what mine looks like. So I studied abroad at the Universidad de Castilla-La Mancha, and so that was my most recent educational experience as listed on my profile. So that's automatically what's going to pop up first. It's very easy, however, to change the university. So I'm a Northeastern alum, so Northeastern and this study abroad university are what pop up under my universities. But because I work at Brandeis, I work very frequently within the Brandeis University dashboard. And so clicking on that, this is what it looks like. So you can see there are 30,000 plus folks that have Brandeis listed in their LinkedIn profiles. That is a lot. And it's very easy to search this set. So if you want to search only folks who have graduated, if you're only searching for alumni, you can search by their graduation date. If you don't know exactly when they graduated, but you know when they attended the university, you can search by when they attended. And then there's these very user-friendly filters that you can change out, and the results will appear directly below the dashboard. So for example, say we were moving to New York City and we wanted to find alumni who work there. You can click on New York City. I'm particularly interested in media and communication. Great. I also specifically wanted to see what other English majors are in New York doing media and communications. So I can filter down further to what they majored. And then we could even filter by how we're connected to them. So for example, I only want to see people I'm already connected to, or I only want to see people who are connected to someone that I know. That would be a second connection. You'll see here, this expands your network even further by showing that I have 60 fellow group members that fit these specifications. And then there's everyone else. And so depending on how many connections you have and who you're connected to, your network and your network's numbers may change. So you can also search by skills. So these are the skills that they've listed in their profile. And it's really a useful tool, not only for finding people that fit this criteria, but for seeing what folks who are Brandeis alums, who studied English, who are doing media and communication in New York City have for skills. This could help you to see the types of things that you should be including in your profile or in your resume, or they can show you aspirational things of skills that maybe you want to brush up on to make yourself a better candidate for a job. And you can also see then where they work. So here's a list of companies based on what those qualifications are. And wow, CBS, that's so awesome. And we see that we have 2 Brandeis alums working in CBS. They both were English majors, and they're both in New York City. So again, I encourage you all to use this tool. It's a really nice way to easily filter down. And when you hover over down here, you can see quite a bit of information rather quickly about people. So you see their first name, you see their geographic area that they're currently in, their job title, and how you can connect with them. So you can see their class year as well, and you can send many of them a message depending on how you are connected. So these folks are my first connections, so I can easily send them a message. If you want to do a more advanced search, so let's take the example that one of our listeners just asked. How could she find if anyone from her alma mater is currently working at Brandeis? So we're going to go up here. We could, again, in the search bar, we can search for people this way by doing a very general search. But what I recommend is the advanced search. So I'm not sure, Danya, what your alma mater is, but let's put in as an example that it's Northeastern University. So this is anyone that's attended Northeastern University and put it in as their school and their profile. And then you want to search anyone from Northeastern that's currently working at Brandeis. So you would select current. Now, I might add that if you were interested in talking with employees that worked at a specific company, to consider maybe also reaching out to past employees, because they could have a lot of insights to you as potential informational interviewees, and not just focusing your results on current. But we'll see if any Northeastern alums, aside from myself, are currently working at Brandeis University. And so we can do this search just like this. And so you can see here, this is the search that comes up. So in the school, though, you'll see that it could mean Northeastern University School of Law or Northeastern University that undergraduate. So you can be more specific that way, but that is how you would do it. So if you wanted to look up folks from a specific school to look for fellow alumni, you can type in their school here. You know, we can type in Brandeis here to see if we want to see who works at TripAdvisor, for example, or you could use that Alumni Dashboard. And so here you'll see education will be highlighted that they went to Brandeis and that their current job is at TripAdvisor, and you'll see that in their title. So any questions about searching for contacts using LinkedIn? It really is remarkable the number of things that you can find here and how easy it is to search through. Oftentimes folks will ask our office or the Alumni Relations Office, do you have the list of alumni in X field? Or do we know any alumni who work at CBS? And my number one go-to resource is LinkedIn. It's what we use in our office, and it's certainly what I suggest you use to find each other. We'll talk in just a couple minutes about the alumni directory that all Brandeis alumni have access to as well. But LinkedIn is a great starting point because you know people are updating it when they, or you hope they are, when they get a new job, they're excited to post that new job or promotion onto their LinkedIn profile. So LinkedIn typically does have the most up-to-date information. Okay, so we're going to head on back to our PowerPoint. So I think this is funny and yet sadly true. So this comic says, I've got hundreds of Facebook friends I've never met. And then the other fellow here says, when I was young, we called them imaginary friends. So you can really put Facebook in here, or you could insert LinkedIn into this little conversation as well. So LinkedIn, just like Facebook, is a network. It's a social network. Facebook typically does have more friends and family and folks that you associate with socially, whereas LinkedIn is the professional side of that. But you really want to monitor who is in that network, and you want to be able to control, just as you control what appears in your profile, control who is in your network. So we're going to ask another poll right here. That's an interesting one. Have you ever received a LinkedIn request to connect from a stranger? And so I'll give you a moment to weigh in. I don't think I'm going to be too surprised about the results here. So just a quick yes or no question. I'll give you a few more seconds to weigh in. So 5 more seconds. Have you ever been hit up by a stranger on LinkedIn? Okay, and not surprisingly, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll and share the results. 100% of us have received requests from strangers on LinkedIn. And that's not good, right? How does that make us feel? It's a little weird. You think, I don't know you. How do you know me? Why should I vouch for you when you're a stranger to me? And it gets particularly frustrating if the request to connect is that generic, I'd like to connect with you on LinkedIn. Even when we get that from people we know, we might say, why? And so I wanted to go over a few best practices for outreach on LinkedIn. So best practices for outreach. What I was saying before about the imaginary friends is that we want to remember that LinkedIn is a two-way street. So we talked about all these ways of expanding our own networks and how we can reach out to people and use groups to send them a message and find them using advanced search and find people who are fellow alumni and connect. But we really want to be selective about, one, who we're reaching out to, but also who we're allowing into our own networks. So, for example, if you do get that request to connect from a stranger, think about what might be the repercussions of adding them to your network. So, if you do add them, what could be the next step? Potentially, they could ask to be introduced to one of your connections, or they may ask you to recommend them for a job at your organization. So what I do, it's certainly up to you, but I do respond to requests from strangers and say, hi, thanks so much for the request to connect. Can you please remind me how we might know each other and how I could be helpful to you as a connection? Thanks. Now, more than half the time, I never hear back from anyone, and then I just archive them out of my inbox. But other times I will hear back, and I'll say, someone might say, "Oh, I hit that accidentally. LinkedIn sent requests, automatically." Or they may say, "Yes, we actually did meet at X event, and I was hoping to talk with you about Y." And other times they may say, yes, I actually was interested in a job at your organization. I'd love to speak with you more about it. And so you have to decide, how you want that to go. And so you can reply to someone's request to connect without accepting them yet. You could send them that reply message, figure out why they want to talk to you, and then handle it best, whether you want to handle that via email or by ultimately accepting them as a connection. We talked about a best practice for outreach is sending that message first versus going automatically to that connect button. And so to the right of the connect button, you'll see here on the PowerPoint screen that there's a screenshot of it. There's a little drop down arrow that you should click, and it's going to go to personalize invitation. Now, you have to go to that to ensure that you're going to be able to personalize that invitation. And that would be the case if you weren't able to send a message. So I would always say, first line of order, send a message if you can. If you can't, customize your invitation to connect. Now, the message box for an invitation to connect is much shorter, so your message could be truncated if it's getting too long. So just a quick couple sentences about why you are doing so. The other option is asking to be introduced by one of your connections. So we're going to demo all of these things in just a second. But for any of these, whether you're requesting to be introduced, sending a message via groups, or personalizing your invitation to connect, it's really important to be specific in your request. So again, think about how you are on the receiving end of receiving a request from a stranger, or even someone you know who isn't being specific, and what do you want to see in those messages? You want to mention, if anything, what do you have in common? So if you're both fellow Brandeis grads, Brandeis has an alumni network of 30,000 people, but that's relatively small for a university of our size and stature. So mention that you're both alums. Be specific about your request. Do you want to learn more about their career? Do you want to ask them about best practices in their industry or in their employer? Do not ever ask outright for a job or internship. That is a big no-no and a big turnoff. But your networking conversation, because it's an expertise request, could lead to a really fruitful relationship that ultimately could lead to that person recommending you for a job, but that's not something you want to ask at the outset. But what you do want to do is, like I said, mention what you have in common, be specific about your ask, and then the last piece is stroke their ego. Okay, why are you contacting them specifically? What is it about their career path, their profile, their experience that tickled your fancy, made you impressed, and made you want to contact them? So for example, dear Alexandra, I saw that we're both members of the Brandeis University Career Connections group on LinkedIn and that you're currently working in career services. I'm thinking about a shift in that direction myself, and I'm a Brandeis alum. Would you mind speaking with me for 15 minutes about your work? I'd greatly appreciate it. Send. See what happens. The worst thing that can happen is 1, they don't respond, or 2, they respond and say no. But if you're crafting thoughtful, professional requests, you should have some really nice luck. And in my experience, the Brandeis alumni community has been so open to receiving requests from fellow alums and students, and you should have some real nice opportunities for networking there. One of the questions I get very frequently is about LinkedIn Premium and is it worth it, because it allows you to send in-mail. And what I talked about this briefly in our past webinar. I personally think it's not worth it for the average LinkedIn user. We want to be creating networks for ourselves that are legitimate, that are real, honest to goodness, organic networks. And going through requesting to connect with folks in these ways, sending them a message through a group, getting introduced to them from a contact that you have in common, or personalizing that request to connect when it's appropriate to do so. Those are really great ways to get in touch versus having someone receive an in-mail from you that they know you paid for. The organic ways definitely are much stronger and typically position you better for success. So we're going to go and do a mini demo of different ways that you could request to connect with someone. So I'm using one of our student workers here in our office, Aditi. She allowed me to use her profile, so thank you to her. And so we'll see right here that this is the connect button. Now, LinkedIn is a bit finicky, and if you click on connect, sometimes it allows you to personalize your message and sometimes it doesn't. So what I suggest you do is to hover over this arrow right here and go down to personalize connection. This is the default. Please don't send the default. This is where you can personalize it with their name, personalize it with the reason you're writing to them, stroke their ego, mention what you might have in common, tell them how they can get back in touch with you, and send them the invitation that way. The other option is, we see here that she's a second connection. So that means we know at least one person in common. So you'll see that in the right-hand column under how you're connected. So I see that Aditi is also connected to Tiffany, Gina, and Jasmine. So I can get introduced to Aditi through one of these connections. So I choose a shared connection right here, and then I am able to write a personalized response to that person. Now, LinkedIn kind of reminds you here, be clear about why you're asking for an introduction and politely give them a way to say no. So this is really important, and it gives them an out. What you also want to be prepared to do is, when you're requesting this invitation, this introduction, you want to write an email as if you know that that person will most likely be forwarding that email to the person you want to connect with. So just be mindful of that as well. So for some reason, it looks, there we go, I'm back connected. My mouse was apparently dying. Okay, so that's requesting the connection. So you can see, choose a shared connection here. You can choose Tiffany, Jasmine, whomever you like. You can customize your subject line here, and then again, type in this message as if you know that Tiffany will forward this to Aditi, because that's the easiest thing to do. She'll say, hey Aditi, Alexandra wants to connect with you. See her message below. She's a great friend of mine, yada, yada. Okay, we have just one more slide to go through, and then I'm going to get to your lovely questions that are coming on in. So those are some best practices to keep in mind. What I did want to let you know of is a couple things beyond LinkedIn to help you expand your network. So alumni events, whether you're a Brandeis alum or an alum of another school, your school's alumni events are wonderful networking opportunities, every single one of them. Even if it's not a networking event itself, if it's a social event, if you're going to a game or a show, that's an opportunity to expand your network. And you're expanding that network in person with people that automatically have built-in like interests. So if you're going to a Boston area musical as an alumni club, you know that one, you're Brandeis alums, and two, you love musicals. So that's a great conversation starter right there. So alumni events, I just want to remind you about those. It's kind of obvious, but important nonetheless. And then there's the Brandeis Alumni Directory, which I mentioned briefly earlier. So all Brandeis alums have access to BConnect, which is our alumni community. It's available on our Alumni and Friends website at alumni.brandeis.edu. And you can search profiles of fellow classmates, and I suggest you also update your own profile as well. Again, it's a two-way street, and people might be looking to find you as well. But this is really wonderful because what BConnect offers that LinkedIn does not is contact information. So if alumni have chosen to share their contact information with the rest of the alumni community, they can have their email in there, phone number, current employer, and whatnot. But this directory is only as good as the information in it and the information that gets updated. So do keep that in mind, that whether you're looking on LinkedIn or the BConnect alumni directory, some of that information may be out of date. And so it's just a friendly reminder to you to update your accounts so that you too can be found. So I'm going to open it up to questions now. Okay. So there is a question here. If you don't hear back on a request to network, how many times would you recontact the person? And unfortunately, this listener has, it says, I have heard 3 times in total. So I really think it depends on the situation. A lot of the time, if you're not hearing back on a request, it could be that they just don't want to talk to you, but it could also be that they don't check LinkedIn. They may have an old email address associated with their profile, and so any invitations to connect might be going to an old Hotmail account or something like that. So I think it's perfectly appropriate if you haven't heard back in a week or two's time to certainly ping them again, either by sending them a message through LinkedIn or sending another invitation to connect or an invitation to connect reminder. 3 times is 3 times a charm. I don't know. You would have to really weigh that for yourself. I think if they don't get back to you after 2, LinkedIn might not be your best bet. So what I suggest would be maybe looking on their company website and seeing if they have a public email available. There's a really great resource called emailformat.com. I think it's email-format, which allows you to type in a domain. So for example, if the domain was tripadvisor.com, it would actually suggest the format of email addresses of employees that work at that organization. And so they would say it's first initial dot last name at tripadvisor.com. So that could be a way as well for you to attempt to find that contact information elsewhere. And then, you just are going to have to decide whether or not you want to cut your losses, because again, you won't hear back from everyone necessarily. But I would suggest, thinking about, putting on your sleuth hat and thinking of other ways that you might be able to reach out to them outside of LinkedIn. Okay. Do you recommend removing contacts from the past that you quote unquote kind of knew, but don't really have a professional relationship with? So, again, this is up to you. I think it's a very appropriate and nice best practice for you on occasion to do a review or an audit of your networks, whether that's on Facebook or LinkedIn, and see who is in my network. Do I know these people? Do I feel comfortable having them in my network? It's perfectly fine to to disconnect from folks on any social media account. That is perfectly your right to do that. At the same time, if folks were contacts of yours from way back when, you never really know when they could help you out in the future and who they might know that could help you out in the future. So it's up to you. You know, if you have folks that you really don't know and you wouldn't even feel comfortable sending them a quick message to remind them of how they know you, then I think it might make sense for you to clear them out of your network. But that's certainly something that you have control over. So I got another question here about how do you feel about asking contacts for recommendations? So recommendations are a wonderful part of LinkedIn and certainly a wonderful part of your profile, and you may in turn at some point be asked to write a recommendation for someone else. So recommendations certainly help to round out your profile. They help to lend credibility and legitimacy to the things that you say that you're really good at. It's nice to have someone else validate that they think you're good at those things too. So highly recommend reaching out to people to ask them to write you recommendations. LinkedIn recommendations tend to be much shorter to the point than a formal written reference. But it's certainly appropriate to ask contacts to recommend you. I personally would ask them offline. So depending on your relationship, give them a call or shoot them an email outside of LinkedIn to let them know that you'd love for them to recommend you and give them a reason why, and maybe remind them about your relationship and how you've interacted in the past, but do that offline first, and so that they aren't kind of caught off guard by the LinkedIn request. That would be certainly something that I recommend. And they can always say no, similar to the tip that LinkedIn itself gives you when requesting an introduction through someone, giving them an out. It's always nice to give them an opportunity to say, nah, actually, I don't really feel comfortable doing that. Okay, questions here about the sleuth ways of finding people outside of LinkedIn. This listener has thought of doing this, but worry that some might think it's stalking. Yeah, I mean, I think any of these searches we do could feel a little weird sometimes, but it's important to know that all of these folks, unfortunately, whether they know it or not, are putting information out there that is publicly available. And so in today's digital age, a lot of information is available about you online, and you're either okay with that or you aren't. And that's why brand management is so important. So again, if you really want to find someone, and if and when you do find them, your outreach to them is appropriate. I don't know, I would find it hard to believe someone responding to you and saying, how the heck did you find me? Because so much is available online. So any other way to figure out how to get to a third contact for informational networking purposes? This listener has come across people on LinkedIn when you only see their first name and last letter. You'd either have to stalk or else no way to do it. Yeah, I think you're right. So doing some Google searches of searching, for example, Alexandra S with their company name and seeing if they come up in a company directory. If they do, then you can put their full name into LinkedIn, and sometimes you have additional opportunities then to message them. Same thing with using their email address to search for them on LinkedIn. So if you have their email format, sometimes people require that you type in their email address in order to invite them to connect. So using that emailformat.com tool could be a good way for you to do that. And then looking in the alumni directory. So if the person you're wanting to find happens to be a Brandeis alum, searching for them by first name, last initial in the directory or by keyword could also help you get some more information as well. And like I mentioned, the directory does have their direct contact information. Okay, another just logistical question. The recording of this presentation will be available online, again, alumni.brandeis.edu/careers, but you'll all be receiving the direct link to the recording in just a couple hours as soon as I upload it onto the website. So you'll get that automatically. And I'll also include the slides with that. So another question here. LinkedIn took away the option to add connections based on being part of the same group. Do you have advice on what to tell group connections that you don't know when requesting to connect? Okay, I believe this means if you are trying to connect with them. So if you want to connect with a group member, again, what I would do there is send them a message first. You won't be able to send a message to all people in a group because it is based on their privacy settings, and I would make sure and adjust yours to allow group members to send you a message. I think that's a really nice way to get the most out of a group. But I would send them a message first and be very concrete about why it is that you're contacting them. If you don't have the opportunity to message them, I would, again, be very specific in the short amount of time that you have in that invitation to connect of, hey, we're both members of this group. I see you work at X company. I'm really interested in learning more about why. It looks like you have a lot of wonderful experiences, ego stroke. Please let me know if you'd be open to this. So that would be my advice for that. If there's any other questions, you can certainly feel free to submit them in our follow-up survey. We'll be responding to questions via email that way. But given that we just have a few minutes left, I wanted to let you know about some next steps. So first of all, thank you so much for those wonderful questions. I think there's so much to cover in an hour, and that's why originally we did break up our LinkedIn webinars this time, to the first one being about profile building and brand building, and this one to being more about the outreach and research. So the next step would be, please fill out our satisfaction survey and let us know how we did. So within that survey, there will be an opportunity for you to ask any lingering questions you might have. We do take your feedback into account as we plan all of our future webinars. Speaking of future webinars, we have one coming up in April. Again, we do this monthly, though we may take a little break for the summer months while folks are on vacation, but we'll be back in April on April 28th with Brandeis' International Business School professor Andy Malinsky, who is an expert on global dexterity. So we'll be talking about how to adapt your behavior across cultures without losing yourself in the process. So that is coming up on April 28th. If you're interested in that, please feel free to sign up or share it with your networks. And then join our groups on LinkedIn. So that is what you're here to do. I hope you'll join me in the Hiatt Career Center's group, Brandeis University Career Connections, and in the multitude of other groups specifically for Brandeis alums and the Brandeis community. And then lastly, I did want to remind you that all Brandeis undergraduate students and alumni of the undergraduate program do have access to free alumni career counseling through the Hiatt Career Center. So that includes one-on-one advising appointments, in person, via phone, or via Skype. And those could include LinkedIn profile reviews, going over networking outreach templates, and what you might want to say to, again, have the most success with whomever you are reaching out to. So thank you all so much for joining us. I do want to give you my contact information as well. Please feel free to send me an email or send me a message on LinkedIn or join me in Brandeis University Career Connections. It's been a pleasure spending the noontime hour with all of you. And thank you so much for joining us. And I hope to see you at our webinar in April. Have a great rest of your week. Thanks so much.